So a bit of the background about who the team is. At the start of the pandemic, there was a deep dive study done, commissioned by Emily Wilson, who was the Chief Operating Officer for NHS, as to why there was no innovation or limited innovation in PPE, why there were no new entrants to the market, why people couldn't come into the market or come into creating new devices. There were a number of causes for that. Some were the 2-, 3- or 4-year frameworks that are let in SCCL. Until those frameworks become open again, obviously new market entrants can't come in. There was also the lack of understanding and navigation in terms of which route to go down. Are they creating a PPE product? Are they creating an MHRA medical device? And if they are, how do they even navigate through that? What do they need to do? What documentation? What testing, etc.? And if you go to the MHRA or you go to the Health and Safety Exec and ask, they're there to regulate you, they're not there to advise you. They advise you and then they pick you up on something that's wrong in the future. They'll look to have led you down the wrong path. So they won't give advice. Similarly, in procurement terms, to ensure there's no breach of contract and compliance in terms of procurement, they won't give advice in terms of what people need to do, how they need to do things. So they were seen as this gap, and that was why the team was created. So we were set up in October 2020. Similarly, around that same time, the PPE strategy was launched, and that was on the backdrop of obviously the high publicity about the amount of single-use PPE that was being consumed. In the first 6 months of PPE consumption, the amount of carbon emissions was the equivalent of 244 return flights every day from London to New York. And we've obviously been on that journey now for 2 years. And similar at that time, the NHS net zero ambition was launched. Now, in the next 6 to 10 years, we're supposed to have made an 80% reduction in our carbon emissions. So there's a lot to do in quite a short space of time. So as I say, the team was established in October 2020. Since then, we've done some work with the Health and Safety Executive. We understood that there was obviously resilience problems in the supply chain. FFP3s and many other products were hard to come by. So we looked at whether it was feasible and practical to decontaminate FFP3s, which are single use, using hydrogen peroxide vapor in either hospital rooms or in purpose-built pods. We racked up 2,500 masks. We put 120 swatches, biological indicators and everything, flooded a room with 3.5 hours worth of hydrogen peroxide vapor, let it off gas, went in, got all the swatches, put some of them into broth, let them grow and incubate for 7 days, and it failed every time. So whilst I know it's probable that some people may have used it and may have thought it's a safe way, there's a Battelle system in America that's currently still on the market doing that. They do have different hydrogen generators. I'm not saying it's not safe, but in this country, the DHSC would not endorse reusable single-use PPE products. So we've also worked with the HSE, MHRA, PHE, etc., and other decontamination experts to make sure that processes are safe and efficacious. And obviously, as we've alluded to there, that one isn't. We also, the transparent mask became an issue back in October 2020. And a number of people will be aware that the clear mask was procured with an easement under HSE. But they then wanted to look at making proper transparent masks with filtration that would be comparable to a surgical mask. There was no test that could be carried out for that mask because it wouldn't pass the EN 14683, which is the surgical mask that a number of you are wearing now. The testing for that means that all materials in that mask must be tested for breathability and filtration. A plastic panel put into that mask would fail, and therefore, within 2 months, we created the transparent face mask specification, which all masks now have to be tested against. We've also stood up the 4-nation review panel, which looks at all transparent masks that come to us. Once they've been through technical and regulatory assurance, we pull together the 4-nations panel, and products that have been through that and are deemed compliant are the ones that get listed, and currently there are 3 of those products that are listed. We've also got 3 compliant products, as I say, in transparent masks with more on their way, and that's work that we're continuing to do. We've got P3 decontamination guidance that has been approved now. So if you have got a reusable mask, there is a recognised way of cleaning them because most of those masks have been adopted and adapted from construction and commercial industries and not made for healthcare. and there isn't a recommended way to clean them. And there is now, through the washer disinfector route that Dr. Felicity Holmes created, there's a recommended process for that. We also have an innovation hub, and straight after this, myself and Anne are shooting off to do the innovation hub, which is a monthly session where we invite people, external speakers, people that have piloted and doing other work in terms of trying to innovate and make more sustainable PPE. And also we've networked with regulators, IPC, the Royal College of Nursing, other innovators and research and development departments. We're also currently working on a massive open online course for glove reduction. That will be available to all health and social care, as well as to training establishments and also the 4 nations. That will go live in terms of the Glove Awareness Week. You can start to register your organisation. So if you want to sign up to the massive open online course, registration week is the same as Glove Awareness Week, which is the first week in May. And then 3 weeks after that, you can start to use the MOOC. It's a bit more informative and a little bit more interactive than it is with your mandatory training of a few slides and a question and answer session at the end. There's animation, there's narration, there's video clips, etc. And it's to try and replicate the work that Great Ormond Street Hospital did, where they managed a 33% reduction in glove usage. Those of you that are here this morning, obviously Jenny Wilson was talking about don't wear gloves unless you really need to. Hopefully, if you want to sign up and use that MOOC, that will also educate and inform people in the organisation about how best to roll that out more widely and therefore reduce glove usage. We've also got a glove dispenser project underway, where it's a glove dispenser that guarantees one glove comes out cuff first and therefore reduces the waste when they normally drop on the floor, create backache while you pick them up and put them in the bin. Move the bin to the left, they'll fall straight in, and that saves a bit of time. The combination of those two things, the glove dispenser one should reduce waste by 10%, and it's going to be piloted in Imperial once the COVID pressures have eased a little bit. We're waiting to go in and fit the new dispensers. The Great Ormond Street and the MOOC should reduce glove usage by up to 33%. A combination of those two things gives you about a 30 to 40% reduction. We're currently, across all government departments, running at 7 to 8 billion gloves a year. So a 30 to 40% reduction is a significant reduction in spend, a significant reduction in waste, and a significant reduction in the environmental impacts as well. We're also piloting reusable Type 2Rs. Those of you that have seen me before, I normally have one to hand, and that is a reusable Type 2R to replace the single-use ones you've got in front of you. They can be washed up to 40 times through a recognised process, go through a dryer, and then be worn again, as I say, up to 40 times. We're currently burning 22 million single-use masks a week across government departments. So going back to my thing about you've got 6 to 10 years, there are some easy, low-hanging fruit which we can then achieve. So in terms of our next steps, as I say, I'm new boy in SCCL, 3 weeks in. One of those weeks I was on holiday, so I've only done 2 weeks. There are a number of people in SCCL that are working across innovation of products and across innovation of different areas, and the idea is to try and pull all that together. Some of the things we've done in terms of piloting, as I say, we're piloting the reusable Type 2R. We will have a specification, we'll have a standard, we'll have a user requirement, we'll have a cleaning and laundry process and the logistics and all the details and information about the dispensers, and we should be able to replicate that again across other products, not only PPE. We now know, obviously, we've got 3 single-use transparent masks, but we also need reusable transparent masks. And as those of you that have seen me speak before, I always like a little bit of a gimmick. And so we are working currently with things like this, which those of you can see, and you just do that. And those of you that have seen the current single-use ones tend to be the Type 2R with an ellipse cut into it. There are a couple that we're working with that are reusable, which give a much better visual and much more of the faces exposed. We're also continuing to do the assessment of the single-use transparent face masks. There are only 3 compliant at the moment in the market. Well, 2 of them are very similar. The other one is upstairs at the moment on the Solway stand, Globus, and that's more of a beak with a transparent panel. So we've got a number of them that are in the chain and that we are reviewing and working with the technical and regulatory assessment to see that they're compliant. We're also intending to do roadshows. There were 7 regional roadshows booked. The first one was supposed to be last week while I was off. We cancelled all 7. They were off-site, and they were off-site for a reason because of COVID and us not being able to go on-site. And that was to bring 14 suppliers of PPE protection above the head, 2 sites with no sales gimmicks, no flashy pop-ups, no magazines, no order books, to actually let you guys and other frontline users come and tell them what's wrong with their products. They're too heavy, they don't fit well, you struggle with fit testing, they don't work if you've got headscarves, they don't work if you've got, whether it's a religious beard or just you want to have a beard. There are a number of things that are wrong with PPE. As I say, we have adopted and adapted from commercial and construction industries and others. Very few products are designed for you guys in health and care. So the intention is for these guys to come out, and they'd all paid up. We booked 7 venues and everything. We couldn't get enough footfall to those sites to make it justified. As I say, they were paying circa £2,000 each to go to those events, and we could only raise less than 100 people across all 7 regions. So we are having another meeting on Friday. We will come out in the summer when hopefully the levels will have dropped. We will be allowed on site, and we will do a pilot test, probably in Leeds Teaching Hospital, where people will be invited to come. Even if it's in a short break, they can pop to the venue. They can then give the feedback. If that's successful, that will be replicated across the rest of the country, maybe across the 4 nations, and that database of feedback will be anonymized and be shared with any supplier and all suppliers, so that they can either take it on board and they can go away and make products more suitable and take on board what the problems with the existing products are, or they might just say they're happy with the market they've got. The intention is, at the end of that, is to come back with then products that are far better suited for health and social care settings. We're also intending to try and come up with, and part of that roadshow was people that have got UVC cleaning, ozone cubicles. Ozone cubicles are currently used in the prison service. If a prisoner only goes in for 2 days, he gets 2 brand new pairs of shoes. Those 2 brand new pairs of shoes for years have been being incinerated. They now go into an ozone cabinet, they get decontaminated, and then they're reused by other prisoners, and it's a very more cost-effective way. What we want to try and do is develop a suite of decontamination options, so community nursing, GP practices, dental practices, other places that don't have access to large infrastructure that a trust might have. So we're doing the pilot, obviously Royal Devon next to us got an on-site laundry. It's to give them that ability to demonstrate and see what other products and how we can clean other products. Because currently, if we just go to reusable and everybody uses wet wipes, instead of having a pile of single use, I've got a pile of wet wipes this big, which we still have to get rid of, which is also problematic. There's a place and a time for wet wipes, but there's also a place and a time for alternatives to that. As I say, the Innovation Hub will continue, and we hope to expand that. One of the things that's come out of the conversation today is I know that Wales are doing some work with hypochlorous acid in terms of decontaminating a room. Other people are doing pilots and trials, etc. It would be good to have a repository where we could see what people are doing. Some of it might be quite sensitive. You don't need to put War and Peace in there, just a one-liner. And it's to allow people to then work in different areas rather than everybody might be scratching around in a similar sort of area. The collective in this room and all the suppliers and manufacturers in the rooms upstairs, etc., could have a big impact, providing they sort of diversify and work in different areas rather than all focus on the same one. Standards and specifications. There are a number of examples in cases where the standards and specifications for these products, as I say, they have come from construction. Currently, the P3 mask, there is no cleaning requirement for a P3 mask. If you wear this for 4 hours, not only do you scare your patients, but you also have no cleaning requirement on the standards and specifications as they are. You can wear that for 4 hours. There will be a lot of build-up condensation, saliva, proteins, etc. If you give that a quick wipe round with a wet wipe and then shoot off on 2 weeks holiday and come back and put it back on, you might get some things growing in there that you didn't really want. So there is a thing about, should we have health and care standards for products that actually do have a cleaning requirement in them, or the reusable type 2R mask has to meet a microbial cleanliness standard because it's a medical device, but that, because it's PPE, bang the dust out on the wall and it's clean enough to use again. But that doesn't work in a health setting. So there is a call as to whether we do have health and care standards for products. And it moves it out from PPE and medical device. Another example is this surgical mask. In one direction, it's protecting the patient. The other one is the splash resistance is protecting you. And therefore, again, you have a conflict because is it PPE or is it a medical device? And there are numbers of those. One of my other little gadgets here is reusable eye protection. Reusable eye protection is great, particularly if you wear glasses like me. They clip in and out. That's your prescription lens. That's all great. Those prescription lenses as a medical device, those eye protection are PPE. So again, there's a bit of a conflict as to how we regulate and manage them. And then the final thing is to continue developing the networks with people like the regulators, IPC, Royal College of Nursing, and innovators and R&D to keep building on. And as I say, that links into the work that we've said we would do in terms of a hub to share the information as well. So what are the challenges to doing all that? The first challenge is I've only got a team of 2. It went down from 6 3 weeks ago to 2, but that's fine. We will press on. Hence the reason to share the resources in SCCL and to pool all the people that are working in innovation and those types of areas as well. There is that thing about support for health and care specifications. There are some people in the room nodding when I said we need standards for health and care products. The more that we can get to agree to that, the more the pressure is on people like BAYS, MHRA, HSE, and the other regulators that are regularly in contact with to say, yes, we do need to do that. It's not a massive piece of work. If we do it in the right way, as I say, we developed the transparent mass specification in 2 months and got it signed off on April the 1st last year. There is also the improved communication across all organisations. That goes back to maybe having the data hub that we've talked about and sharing what people are doing. Also, engagement and attendance at events. I appreciate there is a lot of pressure at the moment. There's a lot of COVID still around. There's a lot of people off with COVID. There's also a massive pressure on people to try and get back up to 120% of what the BAU activity was pre-COVID to try and deal with the elective backlog. And I do appreciate and acknowledge all of those things. But if we can afford a small amount of time to give feedback to suppliers and manufacturers, it's the only way we can develop products. I've spoken to a number of them upstairs, and they're all very supportive and would appreciate that engagement, but I appreciate we have to try and fit in with your day-to-day jobs. Funding. Anybody that's heard me speak before know I'm a professional beggar. I have no money. All the products that we currently have out there and all the pilots that I've stood up have done by begging. Anybody that's in Nottingham, I probably still owe them for some refurbishment work on a room they did that we never ended up paying for, so thank you. Evidence in what constitutes a safe and effective suite of decontamination. Again, I'm no expert in terms of what levels of log 6, log 4, log 5, etc. So if there are people out there that want to work in a collective group to sort of say what works, what doesn't work, not only in terms of the level of cleanliness, but also what's acceptable in terms of in a healthcare and care setting. What's acceptable on a ward, what's acceptable in a mental health department, what's acceptable in a paediatrics, etc. I can stand here and say we're doing X, Y, and Z, but without your input to advise and steer us, I'm likely to mislead some suppliers and manufacturers into what you want, and that's why there's that ongoing dialogue and also the workshops and roadshows. As I say, improved networks and communities and challenges, to focus on some of those challenges rather. And then also, well, the waste rules and regulations and understanding. And the sort of example I give is that, I regularly donate blood. They put a little plaster on my arm and I go home, I take that plaster off, I put it in my bin. If they take that plaster off, it's suddenly clinical waste in the hospital. Things like the privacy curtains and stuff like that, are they clinical waste or are they not clinical waste? So those are the things that we're trying to do. As I say, we only have a team of 2. Of which one isn't Anne, who's sat here on my right. So Anne is a government advisor on waste and all things recycling, reprocessing, etc., and licensing. So what we thought we'd do now is I will ask Anne a few questions of things that I've been asked, and when I get asked, I don't pretend I know, so I then go to Anne, and Anne sort of helps me out and gives me an answer, which I then regale back. So some of the questions we've been asked is, well, why can't we just recycle PPE from healthcare? So if you can take stuff to the chemist, if you can go from home, etc., and recycle, why can't some of those products be recycled?
Thank you, Paul. Well, it all comes down to the source of your waste. So if you're generating waste from a home environment, that's one type of waste. It's that household waste. When you're generating waste in a healthcare environment, so somewhere that is registered with the CQC, then suddenly you're generating healthcare waste. That then falls into a different part of the regulations. Which is why, yes, you can take your masks, even the ones you're wearing in this room, you can take them to your local Superdrug or your Sainsbury's or your Boots, and they can send them off for processing. I didn't use the word recycling. I'll come on to that in a minute. But in that healthcare environment, we can't do that because you've got a healthcare waste. So it's about the receiving sites that take it. It's about permitting. And the whole thing really does come around to regulation. So if you think of your waste being generated, it's a combination of where you are, who you are, what's your job function while you're doing it, and what that waste is, that then sends it down different routes for different processes. So while we are hearing that there is a lot of recycling of masks going on, unfortunately, there are no permitted processes for the health sector at the moment. There are people applying to process it, but at the moment, as far as we're aware, we are still waiting on permits. It takes about a year to get a permit, by the way. So we're still waiting for permitted processes. They have to be proved for efficacy, as you would with decontamination. So that's why you can't just put all your masks from your hospitals into a recycling process.
The other question is, and it came up on BBC News when they went down to a hospital and they obviously saw that they were recycling masks and some gloves as well. So can organisations opt to recycle masks and gloves if somebody approaches them and says, I've got this machine, this equipment that can?
If you have that piece of machinery and somebody tries to sell it you, that's absolutely fine. They will give you the advice that you need to apply, or your organisation, not you personally, but your organisation needs to apply for a permit. And that is very similar to the environmental permit you'd have at a commercial clinical waste treatment plant or a healthcare waste treatment plant. So yes, it can be done, but it is a permitted activity. And one of the things you have to do with that permitted activity, coming back to Paul's logs and things, you have to prove the efficacy of that equipment in that environment. So yes, there was one on Country File. And even if that one had a permit, you'd still need to apply for a permit for every other installation across the country. So it is not as straightforward as somebody going, I've got a gizmo. Would you like my gizmo to recycle your masks or your curtains or whatever? They may or may not work. It may work in some environments and not others. So it is, each one is an installation, it's called, in its own right.
Thank you. And also, could we design PPE better and other products better so that they are more recyclable?
Little happy dance here. Yes! Because what you've got, and particularly I'm looking around and seeing like type 2s there, we've got a little bit of metal in there, we've got a little bit of elastic, we've got a triple layer of spun polyprop. If we could get things designed of a polymer where it would be ultimately the whole thing was recyclable, and we improved what we call the recyclability index, so we can make it easier to recycle, it would be fantastic. And you'll have seen that with Coke bottles and soft drinks bottles. There used to be 14 polymers in a Coke bottle, so there was a little base, for those of you remember that used to have a stand-up base, and then there was a bit of the label, then there was a thing in the seal, and the lid. Now they've got it down to 2 or 3 polymers. It can be done, but it's money.
Thank you. Hopefully that helps inform some of you as well.